legal fees and so on and so forth. She came to me crying because an unexpected benefit of going through the process was that her rent got cut in half. She realized this windfall as a result of becoming legal. That said something was wrong to me with the policy, that if they're legal, they pay a different rate than if they're illegal. If they're illegal, how can they even pay a rate? So, I consider that to be an artificial inducement to the demographic change. When I look at school policy and see that high schools that had formerly been, predominantly African American, such as Fremont High School, Jordan High School, all of a sudden, the shift was so wild, it was no reflection of the community demographics, it was within the school, only within the school. When you see a shift from a predominantly African American population in Fremont High School almost overnight turned to 95% Latino, that tells me that something else happened. Had to do with public policy, of course, but it certainly had to do with school policy and how they enforce the idea of expulsions, opportunity transfers, and other forms that cause the population to move and shift.
Okay. Things obviously were very bad in the 90s period.
By whose perception?
Just by general crime statistics, I would say, between conflicts between the Hispanic communities and the black communities. And it seems to have evolved where things have gotten much better in the last 5 years. Would you agree with that? And if not, what would be your characterization of those relations?
What I've seen is that crimes of desperation haven't changed very much. People still will snatch a purse or a chain or whatever it is that they can get that'll turn into a few bucks. I know people that used to commit those kinds of crimes. In many cases, they actually work at WLCAC and have worked there for many, many years without any criminal problems. Good working, hard-working people. When they have a job, in some part, it solves the problem of poverty in their life. When you think about groups, certainly today, you can't deny that there are gang wars everywhere. Not between ethnic groups per se, between groups. Black on black, Latino on Latino, black on Latino, Latino on black. It happens because groups that are engaged in organized crime have a primary battle over turf and the need to continually expand their enterprise. When you think about in the neighborhoods, I've lived on 88th Place between Central and Hooper for 56 years. And I've seen it from the time it was all white when my family first moved on as a result of the elimination of covenant restrictions, to the time when it became all black, except for the Spanish family, and I don't mean Mexican, but Spanish family from Spain, the Gutierrezes, that lived next door to us, and then to a point where now it's predominantly Latino. Never has there been ethnic rivalry on our block. There have been plenty of domestic disputes, but never ethnic disputes. And I think that it's convenient for the 6 o'clock news oftentimes to see two black kids fighting and attribute it to gang violence, to see two members maybe of the same gang having a fight but happen to be of different ethnicities and attribute it to ethnic conflict. As a community, we fail to define ourselves adequately. And I think that you should find it interesting as an interviewer. The Public Housing Authority should look at what role did it play as a quasi-governmental institution, a quasi-governmental agency. What role did it play as the container where a lot of those crime statistics occurred?
Yeah.
And the schools should do the same thing, because if you look back, you'll find most of the so-called ethnic rivalries or ethnic violence occurs in housing projects, schools, and jails. In the neighborhoods in between, I haven't had that experience. WLCAC has been operating for 45 years. We don't have one incident on record that I'm aware of involving a dispute about ethnicities. Oh, except for one where an administrative employee accused me of saying some things to her that she thought were racially tinged. I beg to differ with her, obviously, because she didn't know which one of me was talking to her, being the product of a black man and a white woman. Too much of our differences.
I agree.
You know,
I agree very much.
if as a matter of public policy, public institutions encouraged celebration of our commonality, then all of a sudden the black kid and the brown kid that live next door to each other in poverty discover that they have far more in common than they have apart.
Except that people control people by exploiting differences, not by unity, right?
Absolutely. Going back to what I said about suppression and containment, and who has their hand on the lid. You know, if it's too hot, it's easier not to touch it than it is to let some of that pressure out.
Okay.
Well,
so
you ready?
Yeah. So just how would you assess the housing authorities' handling of the redevelopment issue?
In terms of what they've attempted to do, I take my hat off to them insofar as the process itself. But I think that there are some problems inherent culturally that the process didn't adequately address or remedy. Primarily, if I just speak for some of my friends that scratch their heads about all this, a community is being asked to dream about possibilities, but they haven't been fully informed about what the possibilities are. And my sense of this process is that it stops short of informing them. What do you want? And somebody says, "Oh, I want a better market." Well, of course. But if our baseline dream is what other communities take for granted, then we certainly aren't dreaming big enough or high enough. And it takes someone saying that, you know, the possibility is that you could have this and it could lead to this and lead to that and lead to that. And people say, damn, I never thought of that. I had no idea that I could, you know, walk out of my front door and down to the first corner and catch a bus that would bring me to the blue line that would take me to the ocean. I had no idea. And if we don't help them dream like that, then I think that we may have conducted a convenient exercise knowing that people only dream so far without being properly informed.
Where would you characterize, or where would you call the difference though between giving realistic expectations of your life will be spectacular and wonderful after we finish our building, as opposed to realistic expectations of what can really be accomplished and a realistic idea of what will happen after the development happens? You don't want to give people the hope and then have them be disappointed.
Well, first of all, honesty and openness is the best ways to express transparency. And if you're going to build a development in the middle of a community that's suffering abject poverty, but there hasn't yet been any discussion about what we're going to do about the rest of the community, then we're setting up the people in this new development in the middle as an island in poverty. We're setting them up to live in privilege, or at least within the perception of privilege. Doesn't matter what the reality is at that point, because our perceptions are our individual and respective realities. So now what happens to the folks that are living in this beautiful new complex across the street from people that are living in dilapidated, torn up housing? All of a sudden, you know, jealousies, rivalries, petty passions, you know, come to the surface, and it wasn't in the plan of the developer, but it certainly is a consequence. At least in my perception, it's one area that we should be concerned about. I think that all of Watts should be looked at as a community of interest. And it shouldn't be looked at as a community of interest for developers to figure out how to exploit. This little place, 1 mile square, should be looked at as a place that we provide a model of how, through self-sufficiency, people realize the quality of self-determination in their lives. And it's aided and it's encouraged by all of the existing resources that the public already brings to bear, that they're just channeled differently, that we're not looking at a job as being enough, we're looking at an adequate job as being enough. We're looking at not just somebody being self-employed, as an entrepreneur, we're looking at them being coupled to higher learning so that they're educated, self-employed entrepreneurs. That's the kind of thinking that I think that we need to engage, and it's not going to happen in these town halls. I can bring it, and I will bring it, and I do bring it wherever I have these conversations, but it's different than having 2 minutes at the mic. It's about a process of education and information that you don't get out of a school book.
There's a point where you can ask what are the limits of what the Housing Authority can do or can't do. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the limits are when their resources to do so are exhausted. If they've got $100,000 to perform community outreach, then from the inception, if you go back to what I suggested, that the community is involved, not just in the idea, they're involved in the rollout, they get the jobs, they produce the outreach. And I'm not saying that didn't happen, I'm just saying as an example, that from the inception, the people that have suffered the poverty deserves to be the ones that are involved in the solution, completely. Not just the product of all of the planning and so on behind the scenes. As an example, I was interviewed by a group downtown, beautiful hotel, lots of snacks and so on. I sat in a room with these two interviewers who were high-paid consultants, as I understand. Maybe they were donating their time pro bono, but they were generally of high-end quality. And I realized, damn, no one has paper or pencil. No one has a recorder on. Is this just an exercise we're going through so that you can say that you've reached out to the community leadership to discuss, the pros and cons of this development? And I objected to it vociferously. I said emphatically to them that I thought that it was a mistake for them to interview me without. And I was told, oh, we're experts at this. We will capture everything that you said and convey that over to our client. Well, I felt personally affronted by that because I know damn well that everything that I'm saying to you, without the benefit of the camera and the audio recorder, that everything I'm saying to you could be interpreted differently, meaning that it could eventually be translated differently, and whoever you say it to could perceive me as being, damn, that guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
Question I've been asking a lot of my people I've spoken to, considering what would you say are the things that can be changed and what cannot be changed about the community?
Well, since you said changing the community, now we're talking about Watts. And if we're talking about Watts, then I would explore ways that introduce light industry, light manufacturing, assemblage, any kind of opportunity that would allow social enterprise to take place, meaning that the residents of Watts can be employed in an enterprise that recycles the benefits of that production. So that if they started out at, say, $12 an hour, that a good production, a good run would get them up to $15 to $20 an hour, so that they're doing better than living at the poverty mean.
What can't be changed about the community? I mean, if you want to improve a situation, that assumes there are things to be improved.
Well,
okay.
I think that without redistricting, we can't change the fact that Watts is linked to a much larger half that's down in San Pedro. And no disrespect to the council representatives, but certainly with respect to the politically kind of gerrymandered state that Watts finds itself in, unfortunately, the squeakier wheel, the louder voice, the greater voting population is on the south end of the district, and that somehow that deserves to be remedied.
In terms of the people of Jordan Downs and surrounding area, what do you think can be? How can people be changed? Can the bad qualities, can the negativism, can that be rectified?
Are you talking about bad qualities and negativism as the kinds of displays of, let's just say, illiteracy / ignorance,
ignorance has a lot to do, yeah.
homelessness, crime, violence.